We have Bob Hill speaking here this morning. Bob has spoken here several times before, and we're all looking forward to hearing him again.
Good morning. My title this morning is Are Women Human? And when I announced that, my wife said, "Oh God, please change that name." She said, "That sounds so awful." Well, number one, I like the title because I can be an awful person. And number two, I was too lazy to go digging through the brain cells. You know, after all, I am dealing with some very old brain cells. And speaking of horses, young lady, when I married my wife, I told her she was very lucky. I had been through horses, boats, and convertibles, and all of that was gone and out of my system.
I was glad.
Well, we just went through the anniversary of 9/11, and every time that comes around, it always stirs up a lot of memories for me, as well as the fact that it sends my thoughts off in a dozen different directions. I wonder how people can so willfully engage in such hurtful and destructive behaviors. On that day, like most of you, I sat in stunned disbelief. Again and again and again, we saw the images of the second hijacked airline plow into Tower 2, and that still burns in my brain. The whole world witnessed this heinous act in disbelief, and I'm sure in shock. This time we saw terrorism up close, and it was very personal. Seeing this human insult so vividly, it brought the realization to mind of the reality of other such events as Oklahoma City, the truck bomb at the World Trade Center, the embassy in Nairobi, a cafe in Tel Aviv, a nightclub in England, and a building in Spain. It was all very real to us. And this one event made other events seem real. And it was not just some blip on the nightly news. We got to see it over and over. And as we begin to cautiously make our way back to consciousness, I realized that this act was caused, I think, because of all of the sadistic isms that we are faced with. For me, it's impossible to see the World Trade Center bombing as a catastrophe and an isolated event. It's a part of that eternal pathological pattern that is committed by those less equipped to join the human family. History is replete with terrorism, and it is usually inflicted on the innocent by the frightened, by the ignorant, and by the deranged. Humans have over time witnessed ethnic cleansing, the Holocaust, John Calvin's diabolical City of God, Geneva, the Inquisitions, the witch hunts, martyrdom of Christians, 8 different crusades against the Mohammedans, the burning and stoning of the goddess worshippers, Stalin's murder of millions, and countless other acts of genocide. The more polite labels of racism, elitism, militarism, nationalism, and even sexism are just different forms of terrorism. Terrorism is defined as the systematic use of terror as a means to coerce, compel, restrain, enforce, repress someone into doing what we want them to do. The acts we have witnessed are not just a part of jihad. This was not a holy war. Muhammad himself said that the greatest jihad is the holy war we fight in ourselves to do good rather than evil. So the greatest jihad is internal. But, it's interesting. It is not just on the streets of Tel Aviv or Northern Ireland or Nairobi or New York City or D.C. It goes on in every country, on every street in the world. I'm reminded of the current NFL domestic abuse violence. There's no such thing as a minority that has not been terrorized, whether it's a black man hanged in Alabama or dragged to death in Texas, or a gay man beaten to death in Montana, or even a wife in a brutal marriage fearing of being murdered by her husband for some insignificant action. It's all terrorism. I wonder, where did we get these dumb ideas of genocide and homicide? Well, I think they are fostered in all of the isms. Colonialism says that it is okay to kill indigenous people if they don't conform. Racism says it's okay to kill races that we consider less human. Religiosism says it is certainly okay to kill the heathens and the infidels and those we deem demonic. And in sexism, it is okay to abuse or kill the less valuable gender. And we find that in all of the religious books, that women are of less value. Everyone but our race, our color, our opinion, our religion, or our sex is expendable. And that's the topic I want to focus on this morning, sexism. We have been treating the women of the world in horribly abusive ways, particularly by the religions that they so faithfully serve. The three religions that we're most familiar with are the three revealed religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These religions were revealed supposedly by God to his messengers, and the revelations were recorded in the book. The revelations to Moses were recorded in the Torah. Jesus' teachings in the New Testament. And the final revelation to Muhammad is revealed in the Quran. It so happens, however, that God's revelations took place long before women were considered of any value. At one time, they were no less valuable than sheep or cattle. And no messenger has come down since that time to say, by the way, God has reconsidered and the status of women has been upgraded. So we're still operating under some pretty primitive ideas. Even when mystics like Meister Eckhart, the Christian mystic, tried to enlighten us, we rejected it. Meister Eckhart said, to go around looking for God is like sitting on an ox, looking for an ox to ride. He was silenced with threats of death, and, I guess fortunately he died before they could execute him. So he took away all their power by dying. Women remain unholy, and only men are close to God. Kings and rulers, priests and prophets, all men of power created God in their own image, leaving women to be ungodly. The male figure became closer to and sometimes even synonymous with God. My title this morning, Are Women Human?, probably seems absurd to most of us in this room. It may even inflame some women, and I wouldn't care that they were. But in terms of how revealed religions viewed women, it is no joke. In the year 584, in the current era, the Council of Macons was convened in Lyons, France. 43 Catholic bishops and 20 other men representing their bishops convened to engage in serious debate. The topic of that debate was, are women human? After some vicious debate, almost ending in fistfights, 32 of these men voted yes, women are human. 31 voted no. Henceforth, women were declared human by the Roman Catholic Church by one vote. The history of women in the revealed religions is more of a history of abuse by ignorant, rigid men with inflated sense of self-importance. Many church officials have engaged in the worst form of dehumanization. We don't kill, maim, enslave, or abuse other humans until we dehumanize them. We make them less than we are. We make black people niggers. We make Jews Jaime, and we blame them for economic woes. We make Japanese, Chinese, and Vietnamese gooks and slopes. We make Middle Easterners ragheads, Germans krauts, Mexicans beaners, and women we call bitches, wenches, crones, broad skirts, and other not so polite names. Tertullian. Now this man is often considered the founder of Western theology. Tertullian had this to say about women, and I quote, "Woman is a temple built over a sewer, the gateway to the devil. Women are the gates of hell." Close quote. St. Clements of Alexandria in 96 AD wrote, "Every woman should be overwhelmed with shame at the thought that she is a woman." Close quote. St. John Chrysostom, around 400, wrote, "Among all the savage beast, none is so bestial as women." I'm just quoting. Don't kill the messenger. In making women useful in the common cause of men, women were considered nothing more than baby makers. St. Augustine said, quote, "Any woman who does not give birth to as many children as she is capable of, she is guilty of murder." Contrast this idea with the countries that are so overpopulated, and they practice religions like Taoism and Hinduism. To contrast that, in these countries, it is the moral thing to do not to have children. It's a moral decision to terminate the pregnancy. Martin Luther, the leader of the Protestant Reformation, had this to say: woman should stay home, sit still, housekeep, and bear children. If a woman grows weary and dies from childbirthing, it does not matter. Let her die bearing children. That is all she is here for. Close quote. John Wesley of Methodist fame, in a letter to his wife, wrote the following: "Wife, be content to be insignificant. What would be the loss to God or to man if you had never been born?" John Knox, the Presbyterian, boldly stated, "Woman was made to serve and obey man." It isn't just ancient thinking, you know. It's current thinking, and it's written in the books. Corinthians 14 states that wives should regard their husbands as they regard God. Corinthians 11. I'm just the messenger. Corinthians 11. Man is the image and the glory of God, but woman is the glory of man. Women were created for men. Mosaic law states that the wife of a slave and all of her children become the possession of the master. And Levitican law, which is the craziest thing I think I have ever read, if you ever read Levitican law. If a woman has given birth to a male child, she is considered unclean for 7 days. But if she has given birth to a female child, she is considered unclean for 66 days. And she must make a sin offering to atone for having a female child. Close quote. In St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5, Paul said, "Wives must always be subject to your husband as you would be to God. The husband is the head of the wife, as God is the head of the church." Paul's second letter to Timothy: "Let a woman stay in silence." You hear that? "With all submissiveness. No woman should ever be allowed to teach or have authority over a man. Adam was formed, then Eve. Adam was not deceived, but woman was deceived, and the woman became the sinner." An Orthodox Jewish prayer. Every morning, young men must pray, and they must say, "O God, I thank thee that I was not born a woman." Martin Luther said this, and this is unbelievable: "Men have broad shoulders, large chest, therefore understanding." Thomas Hooker: "Women are inferior, imbecilic in nature." One of my heroes is Mohandas Gandhi. Gandhi felt he could increase his spiritual power by sleeping with nude virgins every night. And he did this. And the amazing thing to me is fathers lined up out the door and down the street to offer their virgin girls so Gandhi could sleep with them. It's not just the Christian church or the Hebrew teachings. Muslims require a woman to wear a veil because the mouth resembles the vulva, which is declared insatiable. You didn't even know this about yourself. So women have to cover the mouth in public so men won't be seduced by the mouth. Even the modern theologian like Karl Rahner remained trapped in this idiotic thinking. And he said, death is guilt made visible because of Eve. And most of us in this room would agree that Eve was framed. It wasn't until the late 5th century that Mary was reintroduced into theology. And by the way, at that same time in the 5th century, the bishops voted that from that time forth, Mary was a virgin. Just democratic vote, she's a virgin. Now, it all started when there was mob violence and they threatened to hang all the bishops if they didn't reintroduce the cult of Mary into the goddess Ephesian temple. So under massive pressure, females were given some status in the Christian church. Even today, now I got this recently, the Reverend Charles Sled, a Presbyterian minister in Dallas, Texas, wrote his son a letter on how to treat women. And he said, "Son, women are simple souls who like simple things. Our family Airedale will come clear across the yard just for a pat on the head. Wives are like that, son. She will come across the house, across the room, across almost anything to give you love if you'll just pat her on the head." I'd like to see him give that talk in here. In November of 1992, the Church of England voted by a margin of 2 votes to allow women to be ordained as priests. But this was under the threat of millions of people leaving the faith. The first woman ordained by the Episcopal Church was in Philadelphia. And when she went to serve her first communion, a male priest went over, jerked the materials out of her hand, and pushed her down. Later on, she was serving communion, and a female parishioner stabbed a knife all the way through her hand. So even women buy into some of this nonsense. There are, of course, liberal religions. In 1853, the Congregational Church ordained its first woman in America. She became a Unitarian minister, Antoinette Brown. Women have been victims of every form of terrorism. 7 million goddess worshippers were murdered to wipe out the goddess religion. 6 million women were burned during the witch hunts and all of their property seized. Now, the interesting thing about this is when the church took the property of any woman declared witch, they would take the property to the 4th generation. So you couldn't leave anything. Millions of women were gassed because they were either Jewish or unable to work for the Nazis. Women have been barred from the ministry and the priesthood because of gender alone. They do not receive equal pay for equal work. But guess what? Women are still here and they're still thriving. In my opinion, women epitomize the human spirit. They help bring about the 40-hour work week. They won the right to vote. Talk about strength. They can hold down the responsibility of a job, manage a house, rear children, be a taxi to 100 activities, serve their community, and take care of their wimpy husbands. That's pretty amazing strength. Regardless of all the terrorism they have survived, they are real heroes. To face your fear and do what needs to be done is what women do. They do not give in to fanaticism, no matter how many diabolical isms. We must face each and every one of them and overcome them in order to elevate the human spirit. There are still a few dinosaurs hanging around who question if women are human. But as the dinosaurs die off, and they will, women will become stronger and stronger. As we move beyond sexism, I am confident that we can move beyond racism and militarism and religious isms and all of the other isms that threaten life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Be you woman or man, we must never give in to our fears. Our species' survival depends on uncommon courage and upon the selflessness that has been exhibited by women throughout all the ages. Thank you for being with me. So be it.